Alrighty, it's time for another pre-release and sealed strategy video, this time with the focus on Legends of the Force, which is about to release. Now, FFG sent me a media kit, and part of this promotional box, there is a pre-release kit with the 6 packs and the Qui-Gon and Maul leader. So the second half of this video is going to be a live sealed deck build featuring that box that FFG gave me. The first half of this video is going to cover all things sealed strategy and, of course, dive into what makes Legends of the Force sealed different. Before we get going, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in some more content from me, do check out my Patreon as well. All right, so what are we going to do? First, real quick, I'll do a rules overview. Then I'll talk about basic sealed strategy. This is the kind of stuff that I think is just applicable for any sealed, regardless of what set we're playing. Then we'll get into some Legends of the Force specific strategy stuff. Talk about the Force mechanic, which is a major part of the sealed format. Talk about some leaders and how I think you should work on picking what leader to build around. I'll talk about the best commons and uncommons. Commons, obviously the most important. Most of your deck will be built around common cards, and I want to highlight some of the best commons so that you get an idea of what kind of cards I'm looking for when I'm building a sealed deck. And then I'll also talk about the uncommons that are kind of like signpost style cards. They really show you where most of the power in your pool will lie. This will, of course, also be helpful if you end up drafting, because these uncommons usually are the signals for what colors might be open because they are such dominant cards. I don't really talk about rares and legendaries during sealed and draft strategy because for the most part, it's kind of fluky. You open them, you don't open them. It is what it is. Sometimes you open a crazy good rare and it's just going to really help you, but you can't really tailor your strategy around those kinds of cards. And of course, the second half of this video is going to be that live sealed deck build featuring the pre-release kit that FFG gave me, and you'll be able to see kind of how I do it when I'm actually at the table, what I'm looking for as I'm opening the packs. All right. Real quick on the rules. You get 6 packs in sealed to make a deck from, and in the pre-release specifically, you will also get a mini pack that includes the Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul leader, which you can use as part of your deck build. But if you were playing sealed without the pre-release, you would not have access to those 2 leaders. When you're making your deck, you have to play 30 cards in it, minimum, and you can use any leader that you open, and you can use any base, even if you any common base, even if you don't open it. So the store you're at will likely have a pile of common bases, or you can trade them with someone next to you, but you are not locked to the base colors that you open. You can use any base. And you have plenty of time to build your deck. You're going to open 6 packs, right? You're not going to use every card, but a lot of the cards automatically get kind of weeded out because, all right, I'm going to be playing a villain red deck. I don't need these hero cards at all, right? You can kind of move them all to the side, and you kind of filter out this way. But that's the general rules. Everything else is the same as a normal game of Star Wars Unlimited. All right. General sealed strategy. So you as you're sorting your cards, and I do recommend you sort them, and I'll show you how I do it during the live deck build, but you need a density in 1 or 2 colors, right? It's all fun and games if you open like a giant bomb, like a Darth Vader and blue villain, but if you don't have enough blue cards to make a deck, it doesn't really matter. We do want to play our best cards like our bombs, and we will very much weigh them highly as tiebreakers and things like that. But you also need to look for a density in 1 or 2 colors. You're going to have a lot of neutral colored cards, like mono red cards, mono blue, green, and yellow. They are kind of going to be your bread and butter. And then you look at your heroic cards in those colors to kind of guide you into like, oh, should I be in the villain style deck? Should I be in the hero style deck? And that's where you're going to get more of your power level in those heroic or villain locked aspect pairs. You want to play around efficient leaders, usually less synergy style leaders. There's going to be a whole slide in a moment about leaders, but raw stats and effective generalized abilities are better than leaders that require pure build arounds in sealed, because it's very difficult to work around synergy. You want to focus on a clean curve. Close to half your deck should be 2 and 3 drop cards. In fact, I would say it's fine. If 15 of your 30 cards are 2s and 3s, you probably did pretty good. You need to curve out if you skip a turn in the first 2 turns because you don't have a properly costed card, or if you're under dropping too many times in the game, right? You're going to have a problem. Being able to also double deploy on certain turns, like on the 4 resource turn, being able to play 2 drops, or on the 5 resource turn, earning 3 and 2, keeps you efficient. It lets you spend all your resources, and the player who spends more of their resources every turn will generally be favored. So a clean curve, 2 and 3 drops, very important. So look for those in your pool. And then also leaders that have curve filling abilities are pretty powerful. If you've ever played, for instance, with Ray in Sealed, you know how powerful that ability was. Basically letting you fill your curve with that extra experience every turn. Incredibly powerful. There's a very similar leader to that here in Snoke, who I expect to be very, very powerful in Sealed. The last thing, and maybe the most important thing, is look for 2-for-1s. Cards that enable 2-for-1 trades. Ambush is the best keyword, and it's almost always a 2-for-1, right? Your guy ambushes, kills something, and then the unit stays, and you maybe extract another card's worth of value from it. But there's others as well, of course, right? Well-statted shielded units can create 2-for-1 trades. Whatever it may be, this is how you grind out card advantage, and that's going to put you ahead, because a lot of sealed strategy or sealed gameplay is sort of like a mid-range pile of cards. You can't really make a control deck. You can't even really make an aggro deck in sealed. Like, there's more aggro slanted mid-range or more top-end slanted mid-range, but basically it's mid-range battles, units bashing into each other, and who can extract the most value from their units, who can make their one unit require 2 cards from their opponent to remove. And that's how you're going to get ahead in cards, and that's going to make you more likely to win. All right, now into the Legends of the Force specific strategy. So we'll talk about the Force. Now, all the bases in this set are the Force bases. There's the common bases, which are the ones you're likely to run. There's also the rare bases, but regardless, they all focus around this mechanic. And there's a lot of Force units in the set, and there's a lot of cards in common and uncommon, rare and legendary, that use the Force as a payoff. Now, it's going to be more difficult to have the Force online 100% of the time in Limited. You're going to have to play a bunch of non-Force units. You're not just going to be able to curve out with the Force, but you should be able to enable your Force mechanic decently well. As such, you need to look for ways to pay that off. There's a lot of really good cards, like I said, in common and uncommon, that use the Force to do something very powerful, and you should be looking for those cards, because even if you only have a handful of Force units, you're going to turn that Force on at some point in the game. All the leaders, of course, are Force, so they will innately turn on that Force base for you when they attack, if you're playing the 28 health bases, so you're going to have it. When you have enough Force units, though, you actually can also start looking at the leaders that have Force as part of their build around mechanic, right? Like Obi-Wan and Talzin both use the Force on their base, so you don't even need that many on their leader side, sorry. So you don't even need that many payoffs. You have it built into your leader. And those 2 leaders, specifically Obi and Talzin, are going to be very, very good, because they're just like good both in raw stats and with a free rolled Force ability. I expect those 2 to be 2 of the best leaders in Sealed. But regardless, there's others that use it as well. And then there's leaders that don't use it at all, and that's where like you don't need to worry too much about the mechanic. You just have your few payoffs maybe that you open, and then you're just going to incidentally have some Force units in the deck, and you're going to turn it on, and you don't need to work too much around it. You just have to, during gameplay, when you draw your Force payoffs, make sure that you can sequence in a way that lets you get that Force token during the game. Leaders are very important, obviously, and honestly, the most important stuff about them are the generic stuff, the raw stats and their deploy cost. Usually 5 and 6 cost leaders are where most of the power lies in Sealed. 4 cost, which I think we only have Cal Kestis, while you can get ahead with them, they usually don't extract enough value in a game of limited to really be good enough. I don't expect Cal to be a particularly good sealed leader. He isn't going to create that much of an early advantage because his stats aren't that pushed. And then you're going to struggle when your opponent's 5 cost leaders who are like 3 more stats than him, or the 6 costs who are just enormous compared to him, really start grinding out value. But 5 and 6s are usually where most of the power lies. 7 sometimes is too late in sealed, where you fall too far behind on the board after your opponent's leader deploys to catch up. Outside of that, you want to look at how much value your leader can generate. A lot of this can come from free abilities. I mentioned Obi and Talzin. Those leaders are going to generate tons of value just innately. The curve fixing via the leader is very powerful. So that's something like Snoke, right? Now you can start playing 1-drops because they're essentially 2-drops with Snoke's ability. You can, if you don't fill out as many 3-drops, well, your 2-drops can be redundant because you can play a 2 and then Snoke uses the ability. So you've spent all your resources. So leaders that have powerful board affecting abilities to curve fill is really nice. I already talked about synergy versus non-synergy. I'll mention a few of those here in a moment, but synergy, less powerful than non-synergy in sealed. You just want flat power. I just mentioned Revan and Anakin. You can't really build around these 2 leaders, in my opinion, in sealed and draft. It's already difficult enough to fill out a deck with 2 colors. You're going to end up playing like half your deck as off aspect cards when you do this. Just not going to be powerful enough. Now, if you wildly open like a 25 card pool with like amazing cards in 1 color, I mean, try it. It's still probably just going to be better to pick a different leader because neither of these leaders do that much. Anakin is going to be a little easier because you can splash some off aspect villain events, but most seal decks are built around units. In fact, most of my seal decks end up with about 25 units and only about 5 upgrades and events in them, unless I really opened a strange pool with tons of powerful events. So I don't expect an Anakin deck to be crazy good, but certainly more possible to use him than Revan. All right, here are some synergy leaders that I'm talking about. Kylo, right? You need a bunch of upgrades to make this guy any good. Of course, you might open some, but even if you do, it might be tough to build around this 7 deploy leader. He's very synergy focused. Kanan, also synergy focused, probably a little easier to build around. There are a decent amount of creatures. There's not a ton of specters, but you might get a deck with like 8 creatures. Is that enough to make him good? I still think not so good, because if you're really locked into him flipping into a powerful leader, and if you don't have that creature in play, if your opponent removes it, tricky, right? So he's a synergy leader. Barriss, I already mentioned events are not really a huge focus of limited, and this whole leader is built around being able to discount events. Not really great. Morgan Elspeth, keyword synergy, right? In a sealed pool, very difficult. Maybe in draft, a little easier. You can target specific keywords, but in sealed, it's going to be very difficult. Now, she's not going to be terrible just because she's a 5 flip 3/6. That's already just like kind of okay in sealed, but not going to be great. Whereas non-synergy here, now you can say like Talzin and Obi-Wan are synergy, but they're really not. The Force is not considered synergy for me in this set because everyone's using the Force base. There's tons of Force units. These 2 leaders are just powerful on-rate leaders that have very powerful activations with the Force that are free. They are very good. Darth Maul as well, similar to them, has that free activation. He is flipping later. His stats are not the best, but I expect he'll still be very, very good. And then Snoke, one of my favorites, I think, for sealed. That experience ability, it's already been proven how crazy good that ability is with Rey. She was probably the best leader in her set. If it wasn't Cad Bane, it was her. Supreme Leader Snoke is going to fix your curve very well. He's a powerful flip. He can take over the game on his own because he can buff himself. So I expect him to be very, very powerful in sealed. All right, let's talk a bit about commons here. And I'm not going to spend too much time here, but these are some of the best commons in the game, or in sealed, right? We've got like Knight of Ren, vanilla 3-cost 4/4, just a very powerful unit. He can often 2-for-1 early in the game. Got a couple removal here, Protect the Pod and Sorcerer's Blast. Removal in sealed is rare. There's just not a lot of it, and getting a few pieces of it will help. Secretive Sage, going to be a core turn 1 play in a lot of decks. It's just going to be able to turn on that forced interaction basically automatically because it has shielded. Now we have some common ambushers. Tyranitar. This guy is going to have ambush all the time. This is going to be an absolute blowout. One of the best commons in the entire set. Charging Phylax also has ambush. Always has ambush. Will also be very good. Got Itinerant Warrior. Even without the force ability, just a 4/4 shielded for 4 is going to be very powerful. And probably the best common in the set is Talzin's Assassin. This card is wildly powerful. Any deck that can turn this force on reliably is going to get huge value. You're going to have pools where you open multiple copies of this card too, because it's only a common. This one is bordering on why is this common territory. It's going to be an absolute nightmare card in Limited. And here are some bomb uncommons, and boy, do we have a lot. There's actually some others that I didn't even put on this list. This is probably the most pushed pile of uncommons that I've seen for sealed in the game thus far. These cards are going to absolutely swing sealed and draft gameplay in your favor or against you if your opponent starts playing them. But you need to look out for these. You're going to open some of these in sealed pools, and hopefully they're in a color supported for you so that you can play as many of them as possible, right? Old Daka, even without this effect, is just a 5-cost 6/6. That's already enormous. But if you open any of those common night cards, we just saw one like Talzin's Assassin, that is insane. There's the 2/2 that draws a card. There's Karis, which is another uncommon. So Old Daka, very good. Shatterpoint, probably just the best clean removal in sealed right now, will be very good. Red has 2 of these bombs. Boy, do I wish these cards weren't uncommon for sealed, but they are. Mace Windu is insanity. Ki-Adi-Mundi, also kind of insanity. These are hugely effective cards. Remember what I told you about grinding value out of your cards. Like, can my 1 card generate 2 cards worth of value? Well, Ki-Adi-Mundi automatically generates you 3 cards of value because he's drawing 2, and he's also just a unit that's likely going to trade with something. Mace Windu maybe even more than that because he's going to be a much more board impactful effect when he comes in. Eighth Brother and Depp are actually very similar. 6-cost 5/7 ambushers. Yeah, what is there to complain about? That is very, very powerful. Keller and Beck, crazy top end for these green hero decks. And Shin-Hati, I mean, I put Itinerant Warrior above in the good commons. Well, Jin has 4 power and shielded at 3 costs, so this card's almost always going to trade with 2 units and just be a very early 2-for-1 value enabler that also incidentally has that force trait. All right, so next up you are going to see the live deck build, so let me know what you think about that. Yeah, we'll get right into that. Hope you enjoy it. Take care. All right, it's time to build some sealed. This is the pre-release kit that FFG sent me as part of their media kit promotion. So I'm able to give you an early preview on what it's like to build a sealed deck for your pre-release. I really like Limited and always have a lot of fun building sealed, building draft decks. So let's just get to it. You're gonna see kind of everything I go through when I'm gonna build a sealed deck. How I sort my cards, how I kind of start honing in on what leader and color pair I may be thinking about building around. And yeah, it's just a whole lot of fun. So do remember that when you're in a sealed pre-release, you'll also get access to the 2 starter leaders. This is, if you're gonna play sealed outside of a pre-release, you won't have access to these 2 extra leaders. In this case, it's Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. Darth Maul, I actually think, has quite an interesting ability in sealed. It's a very board impactful ability. I think he'd be pretty good. I don't expect building around force in this sealed environment will be too difficult. You have to play the force base anyway because they are the common bases in the set. So yeah, like you're already kind of tasked into that. You're going to have a bunch of units that have the force trait. So he looks pretty strong. Qui-Gon looks a little more build around dependent. than Maul for sure. There is some room, especially if you open a bunch of like enter play units, you can get some powerful effects with him. But I think Maul looks to me like the more generically good sealed leader. We've got Cal Kestis as the leader. He's not one I think is going to be that great in limited. It's kind of a really small stat line. He is aggro focused, where sealed games tend to be much more like mid-range back and forth. And I think he might be just a little too small to have like a pure takeover effect on the game when he flips. All right, so we got a Nubian starship. So what we're gonna do is there's gonna be heroic pile for each color, a villain pile for each color, and a neutral pile for each color, and that really helps kind of hone in on which colors you have the most supported and which alignment, like which leader heroism or villainy you're more likely to be able to build around. So the Starfighter is an okay card, actually a pretty good card with Qui-Gon. If we're being honest, you can bounce it back to your hand and avoid its when defeated effect. The Blue Squadron is a filler card, but like honestly, a fine filler card. A 5/5 for 5 with Raid 1 in space is just a card that will probably make a lot of heroic sealed piles. In reality, you end up playing a lot of like cards that you would consider mediocre when you're playing sealed, and sometimes you even have to play off aspect cards as your last few cards to finish a 30 card deck. This is just a really solid filler card that I think you'll probably play. Force Slow, probably want to try to not play that one. Curious Flock, he's interesting. This is the curve filler of all curve fillers. It's always understated for its curve, right? It's a 1/1 for 1, a 2/2 for 2. These are not good, but the fact that it's so flexible does add some points. Jedi Starfighter is a solid turn 1 space unit, especially if we open a Kit Fisto leader because it's got the Jedi trait. Tarantatech, I think this card's going to be fantastic in limited. It's going to basically be a 5/5 ambush for 5, and ambush is by far the best keyword in sealed or draft. Itinerant Warrior, probably one of the better commons that blue has access to, even when you're not in the Force or don't have the Force token. 4/4 shielded is awesome. Hyena Bomber is not a particularly special card. Hyper Space Wayfarer, also it's just a 4/10 for 6. It's a filler card, could work. And our first uncommon is solid. It's Saisi Tin, so it's a well-statted 5-drop. If you have initiative, you deal 1 to everything, so you can definitely try to game it. And the fact that it's also neutral red means that it'll fit into a decent amount of decks. Dooku is another solidly statted uncommon. I don't know how likely it is that this hidden when played effect will be good, but he's solid. And Karis here is probably, I mean, I can't imagine it's not the best turn 1 blue villain you play. You can have a well-statted 2-drop with the Force trait. This is just going to turn on the Force interaction for you. She has a very powerful when defeated too. This is just an all-star. And we did get a solid rare here. You know, Luke Skywalker is not the fanciest card, but he's also just plain heroic, which means if we're playing a heroic deck, he's going to be in it. He is a 3/5, which is not great stats, but once he gets going, he can really take over a game. A solid rare for limited. And the foil is Kadu, which is fine filler, honestly. Nothing special, but most cards are, in a sense, going to be filler-based. And, oh man, we opened a showcase. Supreme Leader Snoke. Seeing this, this is live, right? Well, you're not watching it live. I'm recording it live. This is pretty awesome. This is a showcase that I don't believe has even been previewed yet, so I might make a small YouTube short showing this guy off, but this is absolutely awesome, and he's actually a really good limited leader as well because of the experience. It's just a very generically powerful ability, so awesome. Let's see if we can build around Snoke. We got a Corrupted Saber, not a particularly great upgrade, but, you know, it might fit. Forged Starfighter, this one's pretty weak. I'd hope not to need to play that. Mysterious Hermit, it's not a great card, but the fact that it's a 1/4 with ambush with Force means it's going to help turn on the Force interaction very easily. Cartel Interceptor, solid filler. Bolstered Endurance, not a great upgrade. I don't love these kinds of cards. I feel like they just make you very dependent on like your opponent not having a lot of interaction. And I need to sort this a little better. I had those in the wrong column. Okay, there we go. A second Cartel Interceptor and an Exegol Patroller. So we've opened a lot of pretty aggressive space units, and like those actually all work pretty well with Snoke. That could be pretty interesting. We may look at like a red-green Snoke aggro deck as a possibility here, and kind of not even worry about the Force mechanic. Tauntaun's a solid filler. Purge Trooper, deal 2 to a Force unit. This is going to be online in almost every sealed game, so he's going to be solid. This is a bomb uncommon, 8th Brother, 5/7 ambush. Even if you don't have this Force trait to get his other ability, you've already got a bomb regardless. Like, this card is amazing. And speaking of amazing, Mace Windu is another bomb uncommon. Not much to say here. This guy comes down, he's massive, and he kills something. It's an open fire attached to a 6/6 Overwhelm. If we can build Heroic Red, this is probably going to be the best card in the deck. And the last uncommon is 3 Lessons. This one, less exciting. You're paying 2 to basically get an experience and a shield token on a unit from your hand. The hidden, I think, is not great upside. And we've opened a legendary. This is Bendu, and he's enormous, and he will probably make any red sealed deck. Like, just, you play this, there's very little ways to kill this in limited. There's not a lot of defeat target unit in this set. There's like Shatterpoint. There's not a lot of ways to get this off the board. When he attacks, he's just going to decimate your opponent. And we have a foil rare. It's Pong Krell. I don't think this card is great, if I am being honest. But he looks pretty cool. And he might fit into a villain Vigilance deck. I don't think he's like terrible in limited. He starts off so slow as only being a 2/9 that it's going to take a few turns to get going with him. And the problem with that is you just spent 7 resources and you're going to fall behind when you do that. All right, so far, let's just take a look here. Our best cards: Mace Windu, 8th Brother. I think those are, and Luke, actually. I think those are probably our 3 best cards so far. If we're looking at like our overall pool, red is by far the most dominant. I think we have a lot of neutral and some really good neutral red cards. So I would be looking at playing around a red heroic deck, potentially mixed with blue, depending on what we get. We could also look at a red-green villainous deck built around Snoke right now. We're not particularly robust yet, so we're definitely going to, we have 4 more packs, but it's nice to just take a look ahead of time. All right, Darth Revan, you're not going to build around this guy in sealed. It's just too difficult. You barely even get enough cards in 2 colors to build around. So imagine having to just play around 1 color. It's very unlikely to work. All right, Porg. We don't want to play Porg, unfortunately. Curious Flock is one thing, but a 0-cost 1/1, not so much. Youngling Padawan, a really solid turn 1 play in Hero Cunning. We would run that if we're playing Hero Cunning. Medical Frigate is another just like decent filler card in Heroic. Like, honestly, all these Heroic cards, Luke, Blue Squadron, Assault Wing, and Medical Frigate, are all just like solid plays. It's nice to get these vanilla Heroic cards or vanilla villainy cards because they just fit into any deck that you might be playing. And these are all 3 actually solid cards. Protect the Pod, good card in limited. It's removal. There's very little removal. Talzin's Assassin is an absolute bomb. Like, this card is incredible. This is one of the best cards in the set for Constructed too. So, yeah, like, we just got a big buff to Vigilance Villainy. Now, we would have to play around the Force, but we can do that. Jedi in Hiding is a solid Force unit to play on curve. Jedi Consular is a very solid unit to start in a green deck. There's, like, if we open Avar, for instance, of course he gets even better. We can start with the Force on turn 1. But even without it, he's difficult to remove in sealed on turn 1, so you can usually get his ability off. Awakened Spectre, it's a 4/5 for 4. Not an exciting card. You're probably going to run this in all your Vigilance decks anyway. It's just a good statted card. Jedi Knight is another solid card to play on turn 2, especially if you have initiative. So nice upgrade for heroic. Watto's okay. He'll probably make the cut. Paleo Star Compass, probably not great. Force Speed looks really cool. It's hyperspace. It is an unplayable card in limited because of the double cunning cost on it. And our rare is Premonition of Doom. And this looks more like a Twin Suns card to me. It's very slow. Not really something I'd be looking to build around here. And the last card is Refugee of the Path. Giving a shield token to a unit with Sentinel. I mean, the fact that the unit itself is a 0/3, unfortunately, probably makes it not good in limited because you're kind of spending a card on something that is not going to generate any value on its own. All right, so in that pack, we got some good ones. Talzin's Assassin probably being the best, but Jedi Consular, Jedi Knight, and Youngling Padawan are all just like really solid units. And we got a Kit Fisto. So remember, we were talking about, oh, like this Jedi Starfighter, maybe we'll open a Kit Fisto. And we have a lot of Jedis, so I think he's going to be pretty good in limited because his ability, similar to Maul's actually, is really, really powerful at board control. And, you know, he's not that difficult to build around in draft. There's a lot of Jedis, so he will be an interesting choice. Lothcat, not great. It's okay. It's a filler. Fallen Jedi is a solid filler, though, for villainy. Just a Force unit, 3/4 for 3. Will of the Force is a pretty good payoff. It's like Waylay that also makes them discard, so I'd probably play that in any Force deck. This Monkey Lizard is a 2/1 ambush for 2. You know, I do think ambush is basically the best keyword, but this guy might just be too weak to make it matter. Hive Defense Wing, 2/4 restore 1. It's a filler, right? Loth Wolf, though, is a very solid card in Vigilance, and if we are playing a more defensive deck, of course, we would prefer it. There is, of course, a pretty big downside for it not being able to attack. Witch of the Mist, really, its job is to turn the Force mechanic on for you. Being a 1/3 with Hidden, it's pretty easy for it to kind of stick around. It's not a great card. I'd hope not to need it, but we might. Trident Assault Ship, 6/6 Overwhelm for 6, similar to like this Blue Squadron Assault Wing. It's solid, and you just sometimes need chunky units, and this is a chunky unit. Padawan Starfighter is another Jedi ship, so that's really interesting. If we want to build around this Kit Fisto deck, we now have 2 space units that we can start with on turn 1 and then start using Kit Fisto's ability. Really important, because Kit Fisto's ability costs 1, we do want our curve to trend down a little bit. For instance, you go 2-drop into 2-drop plus Kit Fisto's ability. That's really powerful. And then the next turn, you can go like 3-drop plus Kit Fisto's ability. And you can kind of play off curve. So having more low-cost units really helps with that. Blockade Runner, 4/4 for 5 with Saboteur. When it deals combat damage to a base, you may give it an experience. This is solid. Like, I'd run this in red decks. Flight of the Inquisitor. I may return a Force unit and Lightsaber unit from my discard pile to my hand. You know, if we were playing a few lightsabers, maybe we'd run this, because if this can be a draw 2 from your discard, it could be decent, but this looks a little too niche. And we have a Hyperspace Legendary. It's always 2. It's not one I'd expect to run. Like, we don't have a single... Do we have any Sith units yet? Somewhere, maybe? I don't think so. There's very few in the set in general. We might have opened one somewhere, but in reality, it's going to be very difficult to run this card. Maybe if our leader was Sith, and we do have Maul, which that can work. Even Supreme Leader Snoke's not a Sith, unfortunately. So, or Darth Revan is, but we're not going to run with him. But it's an interesting card. Probably not running it. Craving Power, though, is just a very good card. This is Overwhelming Barrage at home, but that's still very, very good. And in limited, this is going to be an absolute bomb. So if we're running that Snoke deck, Craving Power is definitely going to be in it. And then Heavy Missile Gunship, a solid-ish space unit to play in villainy. And we don't have a lot of villainy red or yellow right now. So we have 2 packs left, but currently front runners, right? Red looks to be the most supported, but we have a decent amount of green as well, especially if we're playing a villainy deck. I think if we're going to run a villainy deck, it's either going to be green-blue or green-red. And if we're playing heroic, it's probably just going to be a red-blue deck. And I'm leaning towards a Kit Fisto build for hero right now and a Snoke build if I'm going to be in villainy. Let's see what the last 2 packs give us. So, well, we got another Snoke, not nearly as fancy as the first one. So that doesn't add anything to our hero pool. We've got another Corrupted Saber. We've got Voltex, which is a solid 2-drop, right? Not exciting, but it's a filler. Force Slow, don't love it. Another Fallen Jedi, that I do like. Inquisitor's Lightsaber. When attacking a Force unit, this actually gives your unit like +3/+3. It's not that bad because of how many Force units are going to be around. So that could be included. And now we do have a lightsaber, so maybe we do end up running Flight of the Inquisitor, especially if we find like one more lightsaber. Cure Wounds, I wouldn't run this card. Acolyte of the Beyond, I would run this in basically any aggression villainy deck, especially if I wanted Force mechanics. So Darth Maul, if we're trying to enable him. It's just solid, right? And it is a Sith, so we finally found something to use Always 2 with. Village Tender, probably too weak to make the cut. Drain Essence, though, is pretty nice. This is a way to turn on the Force without needing units. So if we're just trying to splash the mechanic a little bit, I'd probably run this in most of the decks because even without the Force mattering 2 to deal 2, can sometimes be good enough in limited. And now we've got Old Daka. And Old Daka is a bomb, and especially because, look, we've opened a Talzin's Assassin and a Karis, and it works really well with both of those. Without even the ability, though, she is a 5-cost 6/6, which is already really good and limited. Like, that is an overstated body. Remember, stats are king in this game format. So not only do we get that, though, we have the synergy. We've opened 2 of the best cards that work with her. So this is really now pulling me in that direction, right? This is almost on like Mace Windu level of power. In many ways, it could be better. So, yeah, like we have a few really good cards in this Vigilance pile, and we don't need that much help for it. Gunji, probably the best turn 1 play in the game, in this sealed environment. This just turns on the Force. It turns on Jedi. It is enormous. Yeah, not much left to say there. Marin is a solid 3-drop Force unit. That's all I have to say about it. It's just a card that's going to really help with the Force mechanic. 5 health, keeps her around. She can attack for 4 if you need her to, if you have extra cards in your hand. So just good. Rey, you know, we're not really going to be able to build around her draw interaction. So in reality, she's just a 5-cost 5/5 Force unit. And in reality, that's probably good enough in limited. And the last card is a neutral card. 5/4 for 5, deal 1 damage to a ground unit when you play it. Not a very good one. And the last pack. Let's see what we got. We got Barriss, and I'll talk about Barriss. I think it's a very interesting leader. I just don't think it's going to be very good in sealed. Most limited decks play like 5 events total. Like, it's a very unit-centric format. She is a very build-around dependent sort of leader, but there's not a lot of events that you can just like build around and crush people with in this format. So I don't think I'd be looking to build around her in sealed. Pounce, if you're playing a bunch of creatures, it's a solid pump. Here's another Gundark. We don't love it. The Starfighter is just a really good turn 1 heroic play. So yeah. Army of the Dead, 7/6 for 6. You know, it's a pile of stats. Sometimes that's good enough. Speaking of a pile of stats, here's Wampa. Sometimes that's good enough. Following the Path, my issue with this card is it doesn't replace itself. It only puts the cards on top of the deck. So you're actually down a card when you do this. You do get to search some stuff. It's cool if you can like put Rey on top of your deck and then draw it, but this is not of the power level we need. Night Sister Warrior, you know, we have Old Daka, and now we have the trifecta of units that work with Old Daka. It is a fine card. It's a little understated, of course, but it has the Force trait, so it's going to help turn that mechanic on. So, solid card. Another Jedi Starfighter really helps with our Kit Fisto if we wanted to do that. So, this Itinerant Warrior, really good unit. Precarious Predicament. Well, we haven't opened the other half of it, and even if we did, I don't love the power level of the pair together. Shatterpoint, though, is probably the best removal in the set. We will run this. Honestly, you'll probably run this even if you don't have a lot of ways to get the Force, because even 4 costs to defeat a unit with 3 or less health will sometimes be good enough. But certainly, it's going to be good enough if we have the Force. Jocasta New. 3 cost 3/4 Force Jedi would, even without text being relevant, will probably make the cut in most decks. So the when played is very niche, but could help sometimes. And our last card is Trust Your Instincts. I actually think this card is really good. It's Shoot First. That actually gives +2, and that's a pretty major buff. It's a solid tech card. And our Hyperfoil here is LOF Cat. So now, I've been kind of paying attention this whole time, and my opinion hasn't changed. I think we have 2 options here. It's red-blue hero built around Kit Fisto, or green-blue villain built around Snoke. And we opened the showcase. I think we gotta build this Snoke deck. I think that's sort of required when you open a showcase. So let's put him over here. We're going to run him with blue. So here's our Night Sister layer, which works really well because we've got this Night Sister sub-theme going on. And we're going to move some of these cards that we're probably not running out of the way. Of course, keep them sorted, because if we build this deck and we realize, oh wait, we don't actually have enough playables, we might need to reevaluate. And we don't need the heroic stuff. So this is where we're going to start. And always, I like doing this with curve in mind. So we got to make sure we have enough turn 1 plays in these decks. Which, that's one thing I think we might end up struggling with a little bit here. We don't have a lot. We might even need to play this Padawan Starfighter. And we might only have 4. We have this Drain Essence, which is like kind of a turn 1 play, but not really. So that is one. Oh, wait, we haven't looked at the green. So we do have one more option. So if we want, this is really it. And Village Tenders is probably good enough, primarily because we have Snoke. And in that case, we probably just run this Forge Starfighter too, because we can buff both those units on turn 1 with Snoke, so they kind of become pseudo 2-drops. So 6 is kind of the low end of what I think is acceptable. I want 6 to 8. But I think we can make that work. We have Drain Essence as like an emergency. But let's see how we're doing on the 3-drops and figure it out from there. So on the 3s, we got Watto. He's solid. The Tauntaun, when defeated, give a shield token to a damaged non-vehicle unit. We have a few of those, right? Carrot that might be played on curve. In reality, he's not great, but we need curve, right? And here's another one that we could play, Hive Defense. Wing, remember, Snoke's ability here, the goal is he turns all these units overstatted, so he fixes a little bit of this. And we do have a decent amount of Force units, Karis, Night Sister Warrior, the 2 Fallen Jedi, so we're going to have ways to turn on his the Force ability, which is not our main build around, but we have some really good payoffs, especially on the 4 slot between Shatterpoint and Talzin's Assassin. Those are really, really powerful. We've got this old Daka here. We've got the 8th Brother. Like, our curve becomes really bomb worthy once we get to 4. Like, look at these 4s, 5s, and 6s. They are crazy powerful. We could run this Pong Krell as well as our curve topper. Awakened Spectre is going to be a solid unit. Old Daka can actually reset the Awakened Spectres. So remember, just because it doesn't have an enter play effect, if it's damaged, she can essentially heal it back to full. The Always 2, we're not going to run. We don't really have the ways to make that work. We can run this Army of the Dead potentially. We can run this Inquisitor's Lightsaber potentially. And then let's look at our green. The Assault Ship, I think we'd run that. Protect the Pod, we're definitely going to run that. The Kadu, when played, you may give another friendly unit Overwhelm for this phase. It's not great, but like, it's a 4/4 for 4, so whatever. And here's Tyrantitech, who's crazy good. We might run the Star Compass. It's +1/+1, and then it lets you look at the top 3 cards for a unit, reveal it, and draw it. So it does replace itself. Could be an interesting thing to do. But potentially we can start with a turn 2, like a Karis. Turn 2, we can play this and buff her with Snoke and just like make a really big unit early on, which can be a little difficult for your opponent to deal with sometimes. And then maybe we run this Hyperspace Wayfarer. Flight of the Inquisitor, we do have 1 lightsaber, but I don't think that's really enough to justify running it. So let's count here and see how we're doing. 1, 2, 6, 11, 14, 16, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 36, 27. So you see, even with running most of the cards we opened for this deck, we're 3 short. So now it's time to look at like really deep into the filler. So we've got these 4 cards, and then we can also look at some off aspect stuff that we might want to consider. There's not a lot in this set that I would really be happy paying extra for, but we've got these neutral cards, of course. And I think we're just going to run the Curious Flock because it's a curve filler. So now we only need 2 more cards. You know, honestly, if we were in red, I'd be splashing the Mace Windu for 8, but I don't really want to play him for 10. That's pushing it. Bendu as well. I wish we could run him, but that's too expensive. And there is a pretty good red-blue deck that we could build as well, so that would have been an option. So other than that, we could run these Gundarks potentially, or maybe we run the Monkey Lizard, not because it's good, but like sometimes 2 costs to deal 2 to something. I mean, I mentioned that about Drain Essence. Sometimes you just kill an important unit. It's probably a card we're going to resource most of the time, but sometimes we'll keep it. And then we'll play the Gundark as well, just as a guy that we can play. And I don't really love these options, so that's the deck. And I think this deck is really, really good. I mean, don't look at all the like filler and be like, this is weak. This is what sealed decks look like a lot of the time. But we have some crazy power. Old Daka, Talzin's Assassin, Tyrantitech, Shatterpoint, Craving Power, Eighth Brother, to name a few. But even in our early game, things like Karis, very good. Watto can kind of carry a lot of weight in that early game. And our curve gets fixed a lot by Supreme Leader Snoke's ability, because anytime we have to play off curve, bam, we've got an experience to toss around. So I think this is going to be a solid deck. And yeah, I'd be excited to run this one. But let me know what you think of the build. Let me know if you would have built around the Kit Fisto instead. I think we could have made a pretty good deck there as well. But yeah, hope you enjoy your pre-release. And until next time, take care.